it going then, mate? Welcome to On the Block.
Are you actually recording?
Yeah.
Well, how about a countdown or something, man?
Have a what? A calm down.
Yeah, you not. I'll help you. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Nice. We might do that in the future then. Get the guests to do the countdown. I like that. How's it going, David?
Hey, it's going good, Toby. What's up, buddy?
No, I'm good, man. Good. You're here with Mark, so it's quite fitting that you're our first ever On the Block guest.
No, I'm excited to be here.
Good stuff, man. So you're full-time crypto. How did you get to where you are, mate?
I am full-time crypto. As most of you guys know out there, I've been in the space before Bitcoin. Everybody laughs when I say that, but it's true. Back when there was DigiCash and BitGold, um, Bitcoin was kind of an afterthought, right? So I can remember being back in some of those forums and everything when there was only a few hundred people there. There weren't no webcams, mics, and everybody was discussing this new concept of a blockchain and what it actually meant, right? So some of us that were familiar, it was kind of questionable some of the way that it was done because it hadn't been done quite like Bitcoin was proposing to do it. And most of you guys know the author of that was Satoshi Nakamoto, and it was kind of a brand new concept from the aspect of doing transaction hashes and doing it as proof of work like that to be able to get the hash. But I know this is more about me, so I'll try to stick to that. So it was I was very curious. I was had just come out of the Navy a few years before that. As most of you guys know, I was in the Navy. I was in ET-7, which is a senior chief petty officer. And I was in the advanced electronic computer field. I spent a lot of time working on not just software development, but also the hardware side of things as well. So I was already getting into the crypto aspect as well, just because everything in the military is done using cryptography when it comes to the software side of things. So that really piqued my interest, and it was just a whole new concept, and I honestly believed then that it would be the future of what we would be looking at. If you'd asked me we would have progressed this far, this fast, I would have told you were crazy, but here we are, right? And it's been an exciting journey. It's been a wild ride all the way through the good and the bad parts of crypto. So, but I'm pretty hopeful for the future of where we're going.
David, what made you take that leap of faith then? Because obviously we discussed this quite a lot in terms of, like, for me, when I first heard about Bitcoin, it was fake currency. And I know a lot of people back in the day felt exactly the same way. It wasn't until more recently that a lot of us have got into it and realized it is the future. So what made you take that leap of faith? What made you, realize it was the future back then?
To be honest, it really wasn't a leap of faith when we were talking about a few $100 to get a lot of tokens back there, right? So it wasn't quite a substantial leap of faith. It was more getting it to try it out and see how it worked, the inner workings of it, and the methodology and the architect behind it. So, you got to remember the first time I ever bought Bitcoin was at 3 cents. Right. So I wouldn't necessarily say it was a leap of faith. It was basically the cost of doing business and trial and error and learning something new. Right. So I hope that kind of answers that question. It wasn't a huge entry barrier for me to come in. The biggest barrier for entry back then was knowledge, right? Because there wasn't a YouTube video that you could go Google how to create a wallet, right? Or to be able to store these transactions on your hard drive, right? We hear all the horror stories now about all the hard drives that are sitting out in landfills with tens of thousands of Bitcoin on there, right? Even myself, you remember the 2 pizzas and everything that, you got 2 large pizzas and what I think it would be worth $400 million today, or even at Bitcoin's peak, right? So again, the entry was very minimal back then.
So, and there wasn't a whole bunch of I guess that's what I was getting at, really, in terms of, like, because for me, obviously, it was Toby. Toby got me into crypto in the first place and explained the ins and outs, and from then it clicked, but it took that person for me to get into it and understand it. So was there, like, somebody in your life, somebody in particular that got you into it? What made you?
It was more from just being in that environment, right? Again, coming out of the military, and I was already immersed in that world, right? Okay, and DigiCash, right, which ended up going changing to eCash, right? I actually needed it for a wallet for a new platform, and it was going to be a way to transact to buy goods on the platform. So it was out of necessity that I got into it, trying it even before Bitcoin, right? Um, but the curiosity was there for Bitcoin. It wasn't that somebody come told me. It was because I already followed a bunch of those forums anyway for new technology. Being from that tech background, call it the nerdy guy in me or whatever, it was just I was curious about it. So it was a huge learning curve going into it.
So you needed that wallet. It wasn't for the Silk Road, was it?
For the what?
The
Silk Road?
Silk
No.
Road.
No.
So you first bought BTC at 3 cents.
Correct.
When did you first sell some?
The first time I sold some was at 5 cents.
5 cents.
I thought that was a pretty good come up, right? I would say the bulk of mine was probably sold between the $2,000 and $5,000 range. And everybody's like, "You're crazy! Why didn't you just hodl?" Right? Well, it was guys like me that come up with the word hodl so that you would hold on to yours so I could get rid of mine, right? But back in those days and everything, if nobody knew that Bitcoin was going to go to 60,000, 70,000, right? Much less the 20,000 that's at today. And I feel like I made the best decision possible with the information that I knew at the time. Now, obviously, hindsight's always 2020. I wish I had some of that back again. I do still have some original Bitcoin, right? It's nowhere close to what I originally had when I was buying it at a couple $100 here and there, right? And selling it. But 3 cents is a very big difference between where we are now. I think we're sitting somewhere around 23,000, Toby.
Yeah, that sounds about right, mate. 23 and a half, maybe.
But it's all perspective too, right?
Yeah, and you can only, like you say, you can only do what you can do at the time. And, it's that temptation there when you've really rode something from 3 cents to $5,000 already. That's huge.
Right.
Yeah, so we know you've done well out of crypto.
Yep.
And we know you've got a pretty nice bag behind you. But why are you still here? Why are you still plugging away in the space?
I always tell everybody that crypto was tailor made for me, right? I'm sure you guys, if you've been around me long enough, you've always heard me say that. Because outside of crypto, I do still have a business. It's a consulting business. I have a business degree as well, consulting other businesses how to run their business or to restructure the business to make it profitable, right? So I did that for many years, and then having the ability to come in with the technology side of it. And again, I was already doing a lot of this already in the military with cryptography, not necessarily the smart contracts because that was kind of a newer thing, but I was introduced to Solidity. Gosh, it's been 10 years ago now, the first time the concept of Solidity came out. But crypto really was tailor-made to be able to take and create an architect for a currency or even what we call today like Ethereum, the different networks. So I've been following the space for a long time, right? Going through, but it really was. And I've worked with some of the biggest projects out there: Gala, Ethereum push notifications, this now push protocol, charge particles, not just from an advisor standpoint on the business side, but also in some cases as the developer or an advisor to other developers, right? Some guys out there would call me, this is not for cloud or anything, but they call me the developer's developer, right? Because usually when somebody had an issue, they would bring it and I would help them get it sorted out. So I love everything about the space. I love where we're going in the space. I do enjoy the DeFi side of things a lot better than I do the centralized side of things. And that's really why I started BlockStar, right? Because this is supposed to be my legacy project. This is the very last project I will ever contribute to the space. And I plan to be here for the next, 10, 15 years, right? But I really do. I love the people in the space. I love being able to communicate across the world and work with people from all different backgrounds and cultures. But it really is the technology side that really drives me, right? Being able to introduce stuff into the space that's never been done before, or to make a better mousetrap of what's out there. Because most everything that you see out there today, I know you guys, as long as you guys have went through the whole phase of the the coins that were the reflection coins and all that. But before that, there were other tokens very, very much similar, right? And it's all just been regurgitated. There hasn't been a lot of new adoption to technology coming into the space. And that's really what I've been looking to change over the last 4 5 years now, is really taking some of the things that are not here in the space to help mainstream adoption.
And looking at that, so obviously the technology side of things, you've said that right from when you first got into it, you couldn't envisage it going as quickly or growing as quickly as it has done. Like, how far ahead do you think we are, and how far do you think we've got to go, to get to some proper mainstream adoption?
Right. I'll give you an example just because of where I live here in the States, right? Anything that you want to get done here, it feels like a lifetime, right? But when you start closing the gaps and the barriers across the world, right? Because there's so many talented people across the world, right? From different backgrounds, different cultures. When you start bringing those people together and you don't hinder or try to block what they're trying to build and working together with all the great minds that are in the crypto space today, I would venture to say there are some top 100 in the entire world brains in the crypto space today, right? But again, like I said, from the States point of view, where technology would move at a pace, and you guys have probably seen it there in the UK and everything too, a normal pace back before cell phones were here. When cell phones first got introduced, it would like once every couple of years they would come out kind of with a newer concept to a cell phone, or what a cell phone was. We went from the bag phone to the mobile phones, right? And before that was pagers, and there was several years in between. Crypto literally changes every single day. It's one of the fastest growing and fastest paced environments I've ever had the pleasure of working inside, right? It's literally days are like years, and I'll call it the real world, right? But technology does change that fast because there's so many more people working in the background in this. It would be like having one company and it's called crypto, and you have all these great minds that are out there building, right? Now, along with the great minds in the space, obviously we have the scammers and all that. And it fascinates me that some of the people in the space have chosen to go that route. And the reason why is because they are some of the brightest minds I've seen out there, because obviously I've had to fight against their exploits, right? So if they just took that time and would put it into legit projects and everything, how much more could we accomplish with some of those minds out there as well? So, and how much money is to be made out there as well, right? Even from their perspective as, a founder or an owner of a project. But I do think we are moving very, very quickly, and literally days or years in crypto space. And I think as far as where we're going in the future, this is the future, right? I do see this being an everyday life. I do see mainstream adoption, and I don't think it's going to take much longer, right? Everybody's just waiting for that key thing that just sets it off and makes the barrier to entry to crypto very easy. Now, I know we got a lot of stuff going on in the background with regulation and all that. And, I'll try to keep my personal opinions about that, out of it, right? But I do see that the regulation that is coming, especially on stablecoins, I think it's a good move. I think it's the only way that it could be regulated, right? And I think it still allows everybody to still have what they want as well, and on the DeFi side of things. But I do think the entry to barrier for crypto is getting less and less all the time. Again, I feel sorry for nobody. You guys have heard me say it before. I feel sorry for nobody coming into crypto. I don't know how to make a wallet, David. I don't know how to do this with my wallet, because there was none of that stuff before, right? It was literally trial by error. I can only begin to imagine how many people in those early days lost what would be today millions of dollars worth of cryptocurrency, right? For one simple mistake. But there's too much information out there, and it's only getting better every day.
But do you think the government feel threatened by the pace that crypto has been moving? Do you think they've been trying to slow it down and hinder the progress while they try and get on top of it?
Absolutely, but I think everybody's under the same in theory, right? That there just is no way to stop it, right? So now they're kind of late to the game, but that's the way governments work, right? They try to stop it, and when they can't stop it, then they're late to the game instead of getting on board and supporting it from that aspect. The one good thing that they didn't do is not try to do crazy regulation, because they didn't know how to do it, right? Sometimes, I don't want to call it being dumb, but almost to that extent, right? You don't know what you don't know. So them not knowing, right? I think it gave crypto the ability, because it wasn't regulated. Now, it was the Wild West for a while, and I think we're still seeing some of the outflow from that. But it didn't hinder production. We didn't have to go out and get all these different licenses. I mean, you guys hear it all the time now about even like oil pipeline stuff gets shut down because it takes 2 to 5 years to go get the proper licensing to be able to just run 10 foot of line, right? Where we didn't have that hindrance in the crypto space.
Yeah, interesting. Like you can almost see that how they've tried to slow it down. But what do you think happens when regulation comes? Do you think we see another rapid growth, or do you think we see steady adoption?
Right. I think a lot of it's going to come down to a lot of people use the word FUD. I don't necessarily that I think it's going to be FUD, right? But every time the retail sentiment in crypto, they are the most bipolar people I've ever seen, right?
Yeah.
And here's what I mean by that. Just because you hear something, that just means that they're talking about it, right? It doesn't mean that it's fact, right? And there's so many people out there that are reporting on crypto, and all of those people don't have their facts straight either, right? So the mere mention of something doesn't necessarily make it true, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to that extent, when you have the regulation that comes, right? And I do feel like there could be some good regulation. Now, with every good regulation, there's going to be some stuff that we don't like, right? But I think above any other industry out there, I think crypto will be able to pivot faster than any other global company out there, right? So being able to get the regulation that we need for people to feel safe and secure enough to come in for that entry, right? And then be able to start trading that stuff. There's only so far that you can regulate. Now, how do you regulate crypto? Well, in my opinion, the only way to regulate it is from the stablecoin side of things, because that's your on-ramp for the most part, right? You're not going to be able to go regulate the next dog, bunny, cat coin, right? That's sitting over in DeFi. There's just no way, because once you get the entry into crypto, then it's going to be very, very hard to track billions of transactions to happen on the daily, right? It's just not possible. Right.
Yep.
So the only way to regulate and the only real regulation that will actually work would be from the stablecoin side of things, right? Because that's really what matters, going in and out, right?
Yeah.
Everything that happens in between shouldn't matter, right?
Yeah, I agree with that, because it's so easy. Like you say, you put £1,000 in from your bank, you take £2,000 out to your bank, you've made $1,000 profit. That's taxable.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
easy to trace, and
Absolutely.
the government are getting a slice of the pie.
Right. When they're trying to go through and audit, billions, literally billions of wallets, right? There's no one government that's ever been able to look at this many wallets and be able to decide who is who, right? It's just impossible, right? There's not enough man hours out there. Now, if you said, hey, here's this one wallet, I need to audit it, that's easy, right? But do that on an annual basis for every single wallet in crypto, right? And then, obviously we all know how easy it is just to go make another wallet, right? Well, that confuses people. Again, people don't understand what they don't know, right? And I think a lot of the governments are well behind on this, and that's why you've heard other countries like China and stuff that they ban it every other year, right? But then it's always still there, right? Because there just is no way to regulate it, right?
Do you see crypto replacing fiat, or do you see it always like working alongside it?
I think there's a scenario where it's complementary to it, right? If you take away all the stigma attached to crypto, it's faster, right? It's more secure, right? Because what do we deal with now with banks, right? Right now, we're in the banking system, right? Besides in the U.S., we have FDIC insurance, right? But what does that actually mean, right? Just like with most of your exchanges nowadays, it's a centralized company with a board of directors and employees, and there's no, yes, it's regulated in the sense that it's a bank, right? But a lot of people don't realize this. If I go and I put $100 deposit into an account, right, that bank can then take 90% of that. They need to leave 10% on their balance books. They can go take and loan out 90% of that, right? And then somebody gives them another, $90. Now they take that and they can loan up to 90% of that out. So really, what do you have at the end of the day, right? All the way back, and Toby, you've mentioned this many times on stable coins, right? What happens, right? when you start taking and you start loaning out on top of loaning out on loaning out all the way down, that original loan, if it ever got called, right, there's just no money there, right? Even that 10% is gone because there just is no money backing those loans. There's truly more backing crypto liquidity pools than there is banking pools. I know for some of you guys out there, you're going to be listening to it. You're going to go Google this and you're trying to wrap your brain about it. But remember that ratio, that 90-10. They can loan out 90% of every $100 deposit, or $90 of every $100 deposit. That's 90 of 100%, right?
Yeah.
It's
Meanwhile,
wild to think about. But I think there is a scenario, right, where it can work in tandem. I do feel like, just like we went from writing checks to using a piece of plastic, right, to be able to do transactions that we now call credit cards, and everybody said, yeah, that'll never work, right? Same thing when we went from doing cash to writing checks. Everybody says it's not going to work, right? Same thing from gold to a piece of paper that meant nothing, right? But at least with crypto in general, now I'm not talking about every single shit coin that's out there, right? I'm talking about good, legit projects, everything, and currencies, which is one of the reasons why BlockStar was always intended to be the native currency for its entire ecosystem, because it does give that leverage, right, to show that it's backed, it's not loaned out. There is no loan outs or any of that. It's truly one of the closest ways to have a legit economy with 100% backing of its currency.
Yeah, you make some interesting points. I think it's just the Fed probably figuring out how they can print extra stable coins rather than made up banknotes. And
Absolutely,
once they've mastered that out, they'll be involved.
Right, but also keep in mind they may do that, and they may say this is the only one that's going to be insured, right? They'll give you perks to be able to move over to it in the hopes that people are going to continue to use just that one, right? Because it is insured if something happened to it, right?
Yeah.
However, right, you're not going to be limited to just that particular one, right? Because obviously, for it to be a stablecoin, you're going to have to come from other assets to that, right? I think there's going to be room for other stable coins to stay in the game. And honestly, if we're going to just talk about opinions here, I with everything going on around BUSD and Paxos and everything, I think that was kind of the start of what we're going to be seeing here in the future, right? And I do think there's a path where USDC does become that the stable coin for the US and maybe even other countries as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go on, Mark.
I was going to say, yeah, I agree with that completely as well. From all the research that I've been looking into, it does seem that USDC is the one that's going to make it long term, and probably the one that the government, in terms of the US government, are going to be pushing as well through the links with Circle.
Right. I would say it is probably the most heaviest regulated stablecoin to date in the market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Question for you.
Sure.
Get your crystal ball out. Where do you see crypto in 5 years' time?
Now, are we talking about market caps, or are we just talking about in general?
I'd like to know it from the point of view of where you see the level of adoption and where you see crypto coming into the mainstream in terms of the utilities and what it can achieve in real world terms.
Right. Like I mentioned earlier, I think we see days in crypto are more like years when we're talking about speed, right? I think that does slow down some over the next 5 years. We start getting year 5 because I think the hardware side of things needs to catch up with the software side of things, right? As far as like market caps and all that stuff, I'll just quickly go into that. I think there's a great possibility where we see a 10 to 15 trillion dollar market cap in the crypto space, because I do think with some of the regulation that we do have that is going to be coming over the next couple of years, I do think there's going to be a slowdown over the next couple of years. I think we're going to continue to grow. I don't think it's going to be at a rapid pace over the next 1 to 2 years. But then after that, I do think once the regulation does come in, and it's not necessarily the regulation, it's just the clear ground rules, right? Especially from the states. And that's what I'm speaking off of, it's literally just from the state side, right? Because a lot of people that aren't coming in, that want to come in is because there's no clear, entry, right? Or once I'm there, well, how do I figure taxes and all that stuff? Which I think is why what has limited the growth of crypto from stateside anyway over the last several years. But if you just go back and look at the new money coming into crypto, there is a lot of new money coming into crypto and has been over the last year and a half, right? So I think once we lay out the ground rules that are ever changing, right? That's the way governments work. But we get those in, I think we see a big mass rally in crypto, not just from a monetary standpoint, but just from a user base standpoint, right? Because then everybody knows how and what the rules to play by are, right? Even with the stuff with, I hate to even throw out names, but like XRP with that all going away, and I think they're going to end up settling everything out. I think that's going to open up a new window, right? Because banks right now, Visa, MasterCard, and all your major banks, they want to use the technology that is offered by blockchain, right? But again, there's no clear concession on the rules to play by. So I think once we nail that and get that out of the way, I think it explodes very, very quickly from a user standpoint.
Yeah, I see that. Obviously, you've mentioned the banks and stuff. What other industries do you think can most benefit going forwards from blockchain technology?
Well, I mean, just think about it. If we're sitting there talking about if I'm over in the States and you're over in the UK, but I need to, and you're a company, let's say I'm a builder, right? And now I have my guys over there in the UK, but I need to order pipe from New Zealand, right? Normally you would have to wait for those transactions to clear, right? To be able to get your material and all that get paid for. Then it gets put on a ship and then it has to clear a manifesto and then shipping and then customs and all that stuff. Think about the technology that blockchain changes that instantly, right? Even a normal bank transfer could take anywhere from 2 to 4 hours, or in some cases, when it's ACH, it takes up to 72 hours, right? Think about how many industries could take advantage of instant transactions like that and how much faster. But I think a lot of people look at blockchain and its use case only attached to financial institutions, and that's really not the case. If you think about that from an inventory standpoint, right? That's an immutable contract from an inventory alone standpoint. And you start looking, I'll just give an example of a bigger company like Walmart, right? You would be able to track everything on blockchain that is immutable. It's one in, one out, right? If you go buy an extra large t-shirt over there, it takes it out of the entire inventory. Think about how many companies out there just from an inventory standpoint, right? Much less a logistics standpoint. Blockchain closes that gap for so many companies out there. So again, I know a lot of people look at it from a financial standpoint, but there's so many use cases beyond that, right? That I think is really going to take crypto to the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've mentioned we've spoken outside of this in terms of the benefits in terms of managing property and vehicles and everything. Like there's so many use cases, isn't there, out there for
Absolutely.
blockchain technology?
I know you've heard me use this example again, but just for the people out there that are listening, I mean, if you think about it from just from an insurance standpoint, right? You would be able to track when you buy a vehicle, you would get an NFT with it that's associated with a contract. Everything that ever happens to that vehicle gets uploaded to that NFT that's immutable. You can't take it away. You can only add to it, right? You would be able to go if you wanted to buy it as a used vehicle, 5 years from now, you would be able to see everything that's ever happened to that vehicle, including all its maintenance records, everything, right? How many times have we heard in the news where, especially here in the States, and again, you'll hear me refer to that a lot because I'm using my local environment, but a lot of cars, they'll be down south, get into a hurricane to come through, they'll all get flooded. Well, they don't just get rid of those cars. They just take them, dry them out, and move them up north and sell them as brand new cars up here, right? With no reports associated with them. How many times has, maybe we can ask that question to some of the people that are listening. For anybody that's ever bought a house, you ever went to closing and then the title comes back and there's some issues with the title search and they can't find all the information or who the correct owner is, or there was a lien somewhere 25, 50 years ago, right? That never got cleared off of there. Blockchain just eliminates all of those things because, again, it is immutable and you can always go back in history and see there is no the paper trail. You don't have to worry about it. There's a national disaster, and some building holding all of these documents gets knocked out, right, and loses everything, right? Think about how many people out there have had fires and lost everything that they've ever owned, right, including certificates or money or whatever they're holding, right? This just eliminates and again closes the gap in so many industries out there. Like I mentioned, on the car insurance side, but that goes for real estate. Like I said, with the closing companies and title searches and all that, it just eliminates so many things, birth certificates, all of that. From a government standpoint, you would think they would want to get on board. They wouldn't have to have all these filing cabinets full of paperwork, even if they're keeping some of it right on top of, you know, on servers and everything as well, but you're still limited when you start having servers. Hardware breaks, right? When you got distributed ledgers out there that hold, you know, trillions and trillions of gigabytes of data, right? That will always be there and live on forever. It's always easy to go back and do a backup from that. Again, the technology behind cryptocurrency in general and the crypto space and that technology as a whole is undeniably one of the use when we look back in history, right? I think this will be a defining moment for the world, not just the US, UK, China. I think it'll be a defining moment for the world on where we were able to start advancing our technology even further because of the use case that crypto brings.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's some exciting times ahead for crypto and blockchain technology, that is for sure, based on everything that you've just described there. So obviously all of your past, your experience in terms of your coding experience and then your crypto experience has led you to the big one, BlockStar. So what made you get to this point? You talk about it as your legacy project. So
Sure.
what made you go down this route and focus on BlockStar?
Well, a lot of people don't realize this, but the original code for the social side of that of BlockStar, if you take away the crypto aspect, but just the original code for the front end of that was actually 12, maybe 13 years ago, right? And this was really before that the thought process of incorporating crypto, right, and blockchain technology into a social media platform, right? But the original front end code for that was written a very long time ago, and it kind of got put on the back burner with my other company and everything as well. But what I've always envisioned, right, from blockchain technology and from the crypto and being able to introduce something from again, what most of you guys know my background from the business world into the crypto space, and having that degree in advanced electronic computer, and that's also software engineering as well, right? So being able to combine those things into one thing that I could leave behind, not just for the world, right, but for my kids. And again, I love this space, right? That's why I continue to be here 18, 20 hours a day, right? Because I really enjoy what it means, right? So being able to introduce different utilities that just don't exist in the crypto space, right? Or in blockchain in general. And that's why I say this will be my legacy project, because this will be the final project I get back to the space, because, obviously I've done financially well through blockchain and through the crypto space, right? And again, I've worked on some of the top tier projects in this space, but this will be the one that I give back, in my opinion, to everybody in the space that's been here, in the past for the past 10, 12 years, however long you've been in space, and then going forward for the next 50 years, because it's meant to be a decentralized ecosystem. But honestly, I just enjoy bringing new technology to the space that just doesn't exist now, and I think will help, bring the new era and transition of what we call blockchain and crypto into the world, right? So I could keep going with a long-winded explanation, everything, but the key takeaway I think should be that we're really wanting to introduce what we would call the people's platform, right? Where people can come in. It's very easy to come in, learn how to come in and learn about crypto, have that knowledge base where they can come in, learn about it, get involved, because I think that's the biggest barrier right now is the education side. Because again, we talked about regulation. People just want set ground rules so they understand and they know what what guidelines to stay in. But there is a learning curve to coming into the crypto space as well, right? Because once you do a transaction, it's finalized. There is no takebacks, right? You can't say, oh, I messed that one up. I need another sheet of paper, please, and an eraser, right? So closing those barriers for the everyday average person, right? And giving them the ability to come on and not have to worry about their privacy, right? Being interrupted every single day. And I'm going to make a couple fair statements that I think are fair to make on this, even though it's going to be played over several platforms. But, even you go back and look at Facebook, right? Facebook used to kind of be the awe, right? 10, 15 years ago, right? It was like, wow, where did this come from? This is crazy technology. And then we found out, and there were people out to say, oh, I would never use this. And then all of a sudden, all these years later, everybody's using it, right? Now, I do think Twitter took a lot of that, we'll call it a market cap from them, that user base, and then now TikTok. But I think there is still a big user base out there across the world that is looking for somebody that's not going to take their data, wrap it up, and sell it to the highest bidder out there to be able to deliver ads. And that's literally $84 billion a year industry, just delivering ads to people. But back to my point about Facebook, they were one of the people that did this the best, right? When they introduced games onto their platform, they were able to create a way, not just for people to come on and share their daily activities and stuff. And for some of those people overshare their daily activities, right? But from the game standpoint, they gave the ability to keep the user bases on the platform for longer, right? So, but what happened was we used to be the users of that platform, right? Everything was tailor made for the user experience. And then somewhere along the way, from a financial standpoint, the company got greedy and forgot about the users that helped build that company, right? And then they literally did what I just said, right? They started wrapping and packaging up user data, user information, email addresses, phone numbers, what they're looking at, what they're not looking at, and selling that over to the highest bidder to be able to sell their products direct target to those users. Now, some people may say from a business standpoint, that's probably okay. And it probably would have been had that have been disclosed from the very beginning, right? But it wasn't. And obviously you guys have seen all the lawsuits out there and all the different court cases surrounding that, right? From all different countries, not just the States. But I do think that there is a place for in blockchain, right, where people can come in with the expectation. You guys hear it all the time, not your keys, not your crypto. Well, it should also be not your keys, not your data, right? And I think that is what BlockStar is delivered on, not just from the social media platform or the TV platform or the digital platform, because we're not telling everybody what you're listening to. It's your data. You do what you want to with it. Even though we are running advertisement, we allow you to opt into it. And we also give you a share of that revenue, right, as a user, right? And that's why I've always called it the people's platform, right? Because it gives the users the ability to come in and control everything about their experience and the data that they're sharing with other people outside of that ecosystem. That was a long-winded answer, so sorry about that. But I think it's very important for people to understand, what it is that BlockStar is trying to do. And as the founder of that, I've really taken all of my personal beliefs out there and tried to tailor and architect a platform that wasn't biased in any way, where people could come on and say and do whatever they wanted to do as long as it wasn't illegal in their jurisdiction. And I think we've delivered on that.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind getting to know, as the founder, I wouldn't mind getting to know a little bit more about you and your history and how you got to where you are. You mentioned you were obviously in the Navy and stuff, but what was life like growing up for you? Like,
yeah, so I can remember the good days and good times and bad times. A lot of people don't know this, but I didn't grow up with a lot of money, right? I mean, one thing I did grow up with though was great parents, right? I always tell everybody my dad was my hero, even today, right? People ask, everybody back then had childhood heroes, Batman, Superman. My dad was mine, right? That man worked very, very long hours. He worked as a millwright in the plants and would work overnight shifts and work 16 hours a day And then come on, when it'd be a Saturday morning, he's just getting home, had breakfast. But he had promised us 2 days before that, before he knew he had to work that overtime, that he would go to the park and play football with us. And no matter how tired that man was, he always took the time to be the dad he didn't have to be, right? And that taught me a lot about not just being a dad, but also being a good person, right? And standing up and doing the things that you say that you're going to do. And I always asked, there was a time in my life where I thought my dad was kind of just the meanest guy out there, right? I never understood why he made me work so hard as a kid. My brother, my sister as well, right? We come home from school, and there were times that, he would just work us like dogs, right? We got to do this, right? And I never understood until I got older, right? And I look back and I asked him, I said, Dad, why'd you always make us work so hard when we were kids? He's like, well, son, what do you do now? And obviously, as you guys know, I've been very successful in my life, but I work for every single bit of it, right? He said, well, what did your sister do? And I told him, my brother as well, right? And all three of us were successful, right, in our own rights.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't have to use our hands to make a living. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? And he wanted us to not have to make our living the way that he had to make his living with his hands, right? But if we could not afford to pay somebody to do those things, that we had the knowledge and the ambition and the skill set to be able to work on those things ourselves, right? I can do everything on my own card now. Technology changed a lot on cars. I wouldn't say I could still work on cars, but I had the worth ethic that I was taught from my dad, right? And my mom, just a great creative thinker. Everybody says she's loud and obnoxious, and she is, but she's the one that kept us grounded, right? Um, from a mom standpoint, my mom and dad were the parents that everybody loved to say, oh, your parents are so cool. Well, you never think your parents are that cool when they're your parents, so right.
Yeah.
But later on in life, a lot of those cues that I didn't pick up on when I was a kid, I started picking up later on. But I'll tell you a story, that one of the best things that my parents ever did for me, right? I'll give you a little bit more background, kind of where the technology side of me came in at. I want to say I was in fourth grade. I had a teacher named Mr. Libby. Well, my mom had come up to the school to come and pick us up one day, and they couldn't find me. And my mom was asking the principal, where is my kid at, right? Well, I was with the principal and the Mr. Libby, which was the math teacher, actually building out their computer lab, because back then we had just got new computers. The reason why, because I had already spent the last year and a half building out games. Some of you older guys may remember a game called Nibbles and Gorilla, right? That was written in QBasic DOS, and some of you guys may remember Edit. But that was my first exposure, and the only reason I got that exposure is because there was a gentleman that I mentioned, Mr. Libby, that was taking night courses, that was the math teacher, and he spent the extra time with me, and I was doing everything that he was doing and learning and writing my own games, even back then in fourth grade, right? So from a technology standpoint, I got started very, very young. My mom was very upset with those teachers and the principal, right? But there just was nobody. There was nobody with the education to come in and set up the computers. And back then, the entry to getting a computer for an in-home computer was very, very expensive, right? And again, I told you, I can remember the good times and the bad times growing up as far as financially, right? But we always had each other, right? And that was one of the things that I remember the most today, right? But the story is, there was a place called Rent-A-Center. My parents went out because of those scenarios where they knew that was the interest that I had, and my brother as well. But we went and rented a computer. Can you imagine that? Not even going and buying it. But back then they were $2,000 to $3,000, right?
Yeah.
Well, we had some problems with the computer one day, and Mom said, "Don't touch it," because obviously it's an expensive machine, right? Back then this was like a IBM 186 for any of you guys that know what that is. So they had the repair guy come out, and he's like, it's broken. We have to replace it. And I kept telling my mom, I can fix that computer. I know what's wrong with it, right? She's like, David, shush, just leave it alone, right? And I said, I can fix it. And then when the guy finally said, no, we're just going to have to order another one and everything, we'll have somebody come out and pick it up. Well, that shop called Rent-A-Center was just a few miles from the house. And I said, Mom, I can fix this computer. So when he left, she said, fine, you hurry up. right? And literally before the guy got back to that the shop called Rent-A-Center and everything, I literally had the computer fixed. My mom was on the phone with them and said, "We will never ask you guys to come back out again. Our repair technician is here now." So, so from that day on, it was the very next Christmas. My parents bought me. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Radio Shack, but they used to have an electronic kit, right? They had the little springs and wires. It had transistors. The first thing I ever made was a crystal radio, right? But my parents, they went and spent the extra money. I don't remember getting a lot else that Christmas. I remember getting an electronic set, right? And that was probably the best thing. That's the one thing, the defining moment that set me on the path to get into electronics and into the career that I eventually chose, right? It was that one Christmas and that one machine, because my brain just went crazy and wild, where a lot of people, when they look at something, they just see, oh, well, it's a TV or it's an Xbox or whatever it is, right? When I look at things like that, I see all the bits and pieces that make it up. And it was because of that electronic kit, right? Where I was able to build all these custom things, right? And that was kind of back at the beginning of LED lights and everything, and being able to hook all those things up and make different things out of that, right? And that's really what was the defining moment, at least in my opinion, that set me on the path to where I am today.
How old were you at that stage, David?
I was probably, let's see, so I was right around 4th grade. I'm gonna say 9.
Wow.
Maybe 9, maybe 10.
Were you top of the class and stuff when it came to maths and certain subjects?
I went to UIL 3 years in a row for mental math, and won all 3 years, and they told me I couldn't come back.
Wow.
Right. I don't know if you guys know what that UIL competition is, but mental math, you can't use paper, right, at all. Everything has to be done in your head from scratch, and that was a lot better then than I am today, right? But I did graduate at the top of my class in the Navy, and then a lot of people don't know this, but I graduated high school as a 3-year honor grad at 16 years old, and then went on to college at Oakwood University, and I was 17. Everybody there was older than I was, out partying and everything, and I'm just some young punk kid. Nobody wants to hang out with a young punk kid at college, right? When I was so much younger than everybody, right? And literally the day I turned 17, I went and got a waiver and that my parents signed, and I went off to the Navy.
So how did your parents feel about
that? My mom was okay. After some discussion, it was actually my dad that originally did not want me to go. He had a big issue, right? It's hard to watch your son go off to the military, especially, you got to remember back then, you're getting to the later part of Desert Storm, right? For the U.S. For that war. So it was tough, but my dad understood. My mom thought it was a great idea. Back then I had a lot of chips on my shoulders, right? Thought the world owed me everything. You got to remember, moving out when I was 15, not because I had to, it's because I thought I was a man at 15 and I was wrong. You ever heard that story? But I did. I was working at nights for a company called Mobile Industrial Painting, called MIP. And I was painting and sandblasting at night and still going to school, and graduated a 3-year honor grad. And then, like I said, went to Oakwood University and then went straight into the Navy. And it was my dad that had the biggest issue, but he understood as well, because the Navy was the best thing that I ever did, right? Because I got a way of knocking those chips off your shoulders. So for any of you guys that have been in the military, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. But it did. It changed my life in a good way, right? From a structure standpoint.
Mm-hmm. And what made you choose the Navy in particular? Because you said obviously a technical background and that level of.
Yep. So when I took the ASVAB, I scored in the top 1% of the U.S., right? I think my exact score was a 98 on the ASVAB. I pretty much could have chose any branch I wanted to in any field that I wanted to, right? But I love the water, right? And I thought the uniforms were cool. I thought I'd pick up more chicks in the Navy outfit than I would a Marine outfit. So that's how I went with the Navy aspect. And I love to travel, right? And I thought I would have the best opportunity to travel being in the Navy.
Did the uniform work?
The uniform did work. The uniform did work.
Thank God. You had to have something work for you, right?
It did. It did work.
So, how long did you serve in the Navy?
6 years.
6 years. And
Yeah.
your wife Sarah, did you meet her through that? Did you meet her after
I
that?
did not. I've actually known Sarah for 20 something years, right?
Oh wow. Okay.
Here's a fun fact. A lot of you guys don't know this, but I've known. What do you want to say, Sarah? 22 years, maybe. Do you guys remember Yahoo chats, like the
Yeah.
country music rooms and all the different rooms you could go
ASL.
in Yahoo? Right. We actually met on there for the first time, and again, it's been 27 years ago, and remained friends all of these years. Right. I went through a marriage, kids, divorce, and everything, and the one constant in my life was Sarah. Right. We were literally best friends, and there was a time there was no communication, everything, just because life happens, right? But it was 13 years ago that I made the change and moved from where I was and moved all the way up to Minnesota, and we've lived together ever since. And we got married almost 8 years ago, and we're done with the whole kid thing and everything. My kids are basically grown, and then yeah.
I'm just kicking back now. So, I mean, it's quite fitting that that's how you two met as well, like through technology.
Yep, absolutely. So, but yeah, it's I always tell everybody, if you're gonna marry anybody, marry your best friend, and she was definitely, I shouldn't say was that, she is that. let me tell you, she's not too far from throwing distance. So
Some marriages go that way. They don't know. It was my best friend.
yeah.
Now we
Well,
see.
any woman that'll go through marriage, kids, divorce, and all that stuff, and still be there for you anytime that you need her, that's what I would call a best friend.
No,
Now, I'm not saying you should go out and go through divorces and have kids and just to find your best friend, but it worked out well for me.
And not to mention put up with you, man. I don't know
Right.
how she
Anybody
manages
that
it.
puts up with me, and she does a good job of that. And she makes a great cup of coffee. That's a plus. You guys know how much I drink coffee.
That's a bonus. So, I mean, obviously, you already said earlier you're working like 18, 20 hours a day. Like, so what do you do for fun? Like, what's your hobby outside of this?
This is my hobby. What are you talking about?
This is my life. I know.
My day job is the other few hours.
do you have any interests out of here?
I feel like I'm filling out a dating profile.
Yeah, you are.
I'm kidding. Some of the things I like to do when I do have free time. Another fun fact: I play guitar.
Can we hear a tune?
What's that?
Can we hear a tune? Have you got it handy?
I do not have it handy. It is upstairs, but maybe someday. Maybe we'll get on and we'll jam out one sometime. You have to come to the BlockStar conference. Maybe I'll bring it with me.
Yes. Looking forward to that.
I imagined you was more of a banjo guy. Like
I can play banjo. There's no difference. But I think you're doing that to say that I have a southern drawl there, buddy. Not everybody in the South plays a banjo. I play a 6-string and a 12-string. Yeah, maybe someday we can all hang out and I'll play. If you guys are able to make it that conference, I'll bring one along.
That'd be sweet.
I may or may not have a few guitars.
I'm jealous actually because I've in my head I'm musical, but reality is I'm not. Like I can't even sing. I can't even whistle a tune well, So, but like it's one of them where you think in the shower and you sound good. Reality is, I've cleared out.
And then you walk out and your
place.
wife's yelling at you. Can you shut up? Yes,
exactly.
What is that god awful noise over there? No, I actually started playing guitar when I was very, very, very little. So I actually come from a pretty musical family. I'm not going to throw out some of the names and everything. You guys can ask me after this, but I'm actually kin to some fairly famous people in the country music world.
Oh, that sounds interesting. Yeah.
So I've been playing for a long time. I'm pretty sure I get all my music ability from my dad. He also plays guitar.
Just going back to your dad and the fact that he was had a really strong work ethic, and that translated to you. Yeah. Obviously, people go one way or the other, don't they? They either feed off that and become a workaholic themselves, or they fight against that.
Right.
So what made you in particular go down that route as opposed to the opposite?
So I think back then, you guys heard me say that I was like, man, he made us work all the time. But he had a way of making it to where it was almost fun, right? Mm-hmm. because it sucked having to get up 5 o'clock in the morning to go work on something when everybody else is sleeping on the weekends, right? But once you were there and once you were in the hangout and everything, it was fun, right? And I had a great relationship with my dad, right? And so there was things that sucked to do, right? Like the cleanup part, right? But the actual stuff we were working on and doing and everything, those are some of the best memories of my life, right? Um, so I lost my train of thought there, but yeah, you're right that people go one way or the other. I couldn't imagine growing up any differently, right? Because I don't think I would be the person I am today had I, right?
Do
And I
you?
guess going back to what you're saying about, you had fun doing it. I guess the path that you've led yourself down is the path that excites you, interests you. So
Right.
when you are working these long hours, you don't really necessarily see it potentially as work, do you? Because like you said, it is your hobby, it's what you enjoy doing.
Right. So as most of you guys know, I am what we'll call semi-retired and everything, right? But I spend so much time in this space because it's people like you guys that make it enjoyable to be here, right? Not just the work aspect, but the relationships I built out over all of these years, right? So it is literally every bit of the crypto space that I enjoy. Now, obviously, I don't enjoy all the scammers and all that stuff, but without those guys, it doesn't quite make a tight knit community, right? Because you want to make sure you're hanging out with the right people in the space too, right? Um, but I literally love everything about being able to get on and talk to somebody clear across the world, right? And not only to see how they're doing, and from a cultural standpoint, and enjoy finding out how their day went, but see their thoughts, their perspective on things as well, right? But then from the technology standpoint, right, to have it's almost, you hear a lot of people talk about artists and everything, and in my opinion, developers are artists too, right? Arts just look a little different. It's not necessarily a canvas, right? But it's a blank page, and everybody does it a little bit differently, right? So even though it may be the same programming language, the architect is what makes it unique, right? You can always tell somebody's code. I can look at somebody's code that I'm familiar with, and they could go write something, and three other people write it that I don't know, and I'll always be able to pick out that one person's, right? And I would like to think that mine is the exact same way, right? And it is. I literally adore it. Now, obviously, there's going to be some nights I'm going to be like, yeah, I was up all night and it sucked, and here we are, right? But those are those crunch times, right? Where you have to get things done. It's not near as fun those days, right? But overall, right, I'm excited about this space. I'm excited to see this space because I've literally been here from the beginning, right? It's like watching a child grow up, right? So being here for this long and being able to watch the space evolve into what it is, right? And I'm just super excited to be part of it in a very small way, right? And hopefully, what I'm doing and our team is doing over at BlockStar will change the landscape and really will become the standard, not the exception in the space. But for me personally, everything, I love everything about it, man. The long nights, the hustle, the bustle, everything.
So on that note, then, David, like retirement. Will you? I mean, semi-retired, but do you think you'll ever want to put your feet up completely and retire? Like, from me knowing you personally, I just can't see it. But
Yeah, that's why I say semi-retired. I like people would like for me to say retire, but I just can't do it. What would I do, right?
yeah,
What would
you'd
I
be,
do with my time? I'm one of
you
those people. I love a challenge, right?
yeah.
And if you challenge me, I'm going to probably accept it. So please don't, right? Um, what would I do? Go hang out and fish all day? Well, if the fish ain't biting, I'm gonna be pissed, and I'll probably be back at the computer in 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Believe it or not, you asked me about hobbies earlier, Mark. Um, Believe it or not, whenever I do take those times away, the last thing I want to do is look at technology. I would rather be out in the middle of the woods somewhere in a cabin, sitting there fishing, right? And literally not have any technology. As much as I'm immersed in technology, in the everyday, that is the ultimate relaxing get away from me, being away from people, being away from technology, everything, and just kind of mentally recoup and everything. But then I always miss it, right? And then, so being retired, yes, I could go travel and all that stuff, but it's the day-to-day challenges and the day-to-day interactions that really keep me motivated to continue to go on another day in this space, right? It's never dull, it's never boring, and I'm one of those people, I have to be doing something. I'm not one just to sit around and do nothing, right? I have to have something to occupy my mind because my mind runs literally a million miles an hour, right? So I have to have some kind of focus for that, and crypto has been great for that.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I can relate to the mind running all the time, and crypto's a little bit of a focus.
What would you say your end goal is, David?
End goal. Mine's not a financial dollar, obviously. Like you guys know, I've been fortunate enough in life where I've been successful, right? Um, Mine is the end goal for me would be for the everyday Joe, right, to be able to come on to a platform and be able to immediately get into the crypto space and change their whole perspective on how things within blockchain work, and to give everybody the same opportunities to be financially free, right? And I think crypto offers that ability for almost everybody, no matter what culture you're from, no matter what country you're from, or whatever the demographics are there, right? And I would like to think that what we're doing is playing a small piece of that, right? So being able to have people be able to come in with different ethnics, everything, and be able to come in, find it very easily, and go straight into being able to and be educated in the space. Because it's one thing just to come in and say, "Here you go, here's all the tools, go use them," right? But one of the main reasons that we created the social platform first, right, was to give people the ability to come in, socialize, and start learning from our knowledge base, right? Because they say if you want to have a great investor in projects, right, teach them, right? You've heard the old saying, you teach somebody to fish, you feed them for a day, right? I'm sorry, you give them a fish, you feed them for a day. If you teach them how to fish, you feed them for a lifetime, right? And that's where really I'm looking to do personally, right? I get a lot of enjoyment. My wife and I are really big into philanthropy, right? And for you guys don't know what that is, I suggest Googling it, right? But philanthropy is giving back, right? Being able to do things, and that's not for clout. We actually enjoy doing those things. I don't know if you guys remember the tornado, or heard about it over in Moore, Oklahoma, where there are a lot of kids that lost their lives there at the school and everything from a huge tornado that come through there. We did a fundraiser, and we went and collected toothbrushes, toothpaste, backpacks, everything that the kid would possibly need, right? And we literally drove hundreds of miles down there just to go hand those things out, backpacks, everything. And that's something we enjoy doing. We've done the same thing for different hurricanes and stuff around the world. But being able to bring that and bring philanthropy into crypto as well, right? From personally from me, but then also it's something we do as a company as well. Um, but philanthropy means many things, right? It's not just all about just giving physical items, but actually making somebody better than what they were from the day that I met them, right? And that's why anybody that's ever come to me, and there's several people that will probably comment on this and say, David was there when I needed him, right? And again, that's not for clout. Those are things that I enjoy doing, right? I've never told anybody that came to me sincerely and said, "Hey, David, I got a problem. Um, I can't figure this out, can't do this on a contract," or, "Hey, David, what do you think about this contract?" Now, literally, I get thousands of messages a day. "David, go look at this contract. What do you think?" And some of them listen, some of them don't, right? But it's guys that I've put in my line of sight and everything that I've worked with, every day, like you guys that I've worked with for how long's it been now, Toby? A year and a half?
Yeah,
2
something
years?
like that. I think. Yeah, it's nearly 2 years, maybe.
Too long?
Too long, definitely too
That's
long.
why I usually tell myself too long. But I enjoy that aspect of it, right? Is sharing knowledge, because knowledge is power. And I didn't necessarily have the people in the space because it was so new back then to me, right? And again, why I tell everybody I don't feel sorry for anybody, because there's too many resources out there that you can take advantage of. but from a personal level, being able to take my experiences, and that's why I'm doing this. And I know that's why Toby and Mark are putting all these together with different people throughout the space and getting their perspectives and kind of getting their background and see that maybe you have a lot of things that are relatable, right? So it's not that myself or these other people that are going to be doing these interviews and stuff are just some crazy exception to the rule. I think you'll find that, based on some of the stuff that I've said today, that we probably have some things in common, right? Or you can see bits and pieces of yourself and in me as well, right? So being able to help other people with knowledge, because again, like I said, knowledge is power, and I'm here to share that. And the best way for me to share it with the most amount of people is to be able to build those knowledge bases, build those platforms, and the team that I put together behind BlockStar and everything are just invaluable, right? They're irreplaceable, right? Because these people are here in the space for the exact same reasons that I started out in, right? Maybe from a different perspective. But I think everybody's here is to come in and learn something, a new technology, and to maybe have financial freedom at the end of it. Because you don't come into crypto just because you want to work long days and hours, right? You come in for the hopes of being able to find that one project that you can do, 5x, 10x, 100x, right? That's the goal. But how do you get there, right? And how do you pick those projects? And I enjoy sharing that experience.
I've really enjoyed this. It's been really enlightening, even though I know you as on a kind of a business relationship, and I know we have a lot of banter backwards and forwards. But it's
Right.
this has been really cool. I've really enjoyed it.
Well, I'm glad. So maybe we can do a part 2 of this. Because I know some of this stuff, and you guys like to take deep dives into everything, especially when it comes to projects and stuff. And I know we only got about an hour today, and I know you guys would like to take a deep dive. Maybe we can do a part 2, and I can tell you some more fun stories. Maybe through my late teen years into my 20s and everything. I got tons of stories.
Yeah, let's do it. Maybe even a trilogy, because I know like an hour is never enough for David Hunter.
It is never enough. Never enough. And I've tried to keep some of my answers short for you guys. But no, it's been awesome and everything. And I appreciate you guys putting together this series because I think it's going to be very important. I'm looking forward to actually hearing some of the other people in the space that you guys are going to be bringing on. So I appreciate you guys putting this stuff together.
Yeah, it's going to be. I mean, it's no one more fitting to have on as a first guest than you. But hopefully, we're going to have people from all sorts of different backgrounds and industries. Maybe sometimes not even crypto related. So, yeah, it should be good.
No, I think that's awesome, especially getting people from all different industries, right, to come in and be able to give their perspective, whether they know anything about crypto or they're in the crypto space, right? But even if they're not, and finding out some of the key metrics on what their barrier to entry is, right? Why haven't they made the leap into the space? Is it regulation? Is it they don't know what they're doing, right? There's always a reason, right? I think that's great information for other projects out there. Listen, not just BlockStar, but other projects to see where we can start closing some of those gaps. Because it's not going to be one project that changes the space, and I know that, right? But from the BlockStar standpoint, we do want to play a part in that, right? We think that we do have a part to play, and I think there's other projects that are on the same playing field that are also looking to close some of those barriers. There's not just out looking to take advantage of people.
Yeah, nice. Now, before we close out, then, do you want to tell people where they can find you?
You can find me over on BlockStar. It is at David Wayne Hunter. You can find me over on Telegram, although I'm not normally there because I am over on the other platform. But most of you guys out there, I'm not hard to find. If you do message me on Telegram, though, it is at David Wayne Hunter. I always respond to everybody within 24 hours. So if I don't respond to you right away, just keep in mind I get hundreds of thousands of messages a day. Just give me a chance to weed through them. But if you want to message me over on BlockStar, you will get a faster response. But I'm happy to sit and have a conversation with you guys as well.
And remember, guys, get yourself signed up via BlockStar.site.
That is the gateway to the ecosystem. We got tons of news coming out. I'll use this as an opportunity to plug BlockStar as well. We got tons of stuff coming out in the ecosystem. So I do encourage you guys to go check out BlockStar.site. And that'll show you all the different stuff that's already live inside the ecosystem. Stay tuned. We do have a bunch of new announcements coming out over the next month as well. And we're super excited to share that. We do feel like this will be one of those defining moments also that sets BlockStar apart in this industry, not just from our social platforms and all of that we built out, but this is a defining moment for us as a company, but also for the space as well, introducing a totally unique and new idea to the space that I think is very much needed after all the news. I'll kind of give you a teaser after all the news we've seen in recent months with other, we'll call them projects. I'll let you guys figure out where the hint comes from. But we do have some crazy good announcements coming out over the next month or two. So stay tuned for that stuff.
Of course,
You
man.
heard.
It wouldn't be a David Hunter without a BlockStar plug, would it?
That's right, buddy. Gotta take advantage where I can. But again, thanks a lot, Toby and Mark, for having me on, and I'm sure they will see you guys next time.
Thanks for taking the time out of your schedule to join us, man, and we'll look forward to part 2, eh?
Always. See you, buddy.
Thanks, David.